The excitement must have been, of course, creating the mold for PR in the region and then going around and breaking that same mold so many times over. So my question to you, because you mentioned that it was quite a challenge for you to have, mentors and anchors and people who were in the industry that you could look up to and try to learn from, because there simply weren't that many. And the industry was so small. So what can you tell me about that?
So my role models weren't in the industry,
Yes.
because they weren't there, but my role models were captains of industries that were able to trust me with their brands. And that's a huge thing to do, because you're trusting an outsider with your reputation, so we became the scaffolding, if you like, for clients, and we would have to take very deep dives into brands and actually see, what they actually stood for. It might have been very different from what they said they stood for. And so I feel very lucky and privileged to have had access to some of the best brains on the continent, whether that was in corporate, whether that was politically, whether that was in the non-profit. And they became my mentors. So it wasn't really mentors in the industry.
Yes. Every business has its ups and downs and its risks. As the captain of the ship that you are steering, can you highlight some of the instances where you were like, this either has never been done before, this could go well or it could go terribly, but we're going to take that risk?
I think for me it was really Safaricom. That we got that when we were maybe a year old as a business, and it was this huge life-changing product that Kenyans didn't even know that they needed. They were providing a solution for a problem that we didn't even know we had. And so I think for me it was just being able to be brave enough. And I really do appreciate Michael Joseph, because he trusted us, and together we were able to co-create for the Safaricom brand. And I think that's powerful, but it's also very risky, because if it doesn't go right, everything can fall. But we did it, and there was very much synergy between me and him, and our energies just worked together. We fought, but in a good way. And for him, it was a risk as well, because not only was he creating the Safaricom brand, he was also creating a new industry. So we were both in very similar positions, in that I was also creating an industry in my path, and he was creating an industry in what he was doing.
Yes.
But so I think the biggest risk I took, and probably the best one, was actually help co-create the Safaricom brand.
That is phenomenal. As a woman in leadership, as an industry leader in and of your own right, women globally are judged more harshly on several fronts. The first, of course, being the work-life balance. You mentioned as you were in infancy, Gina did PR, that you also had young children. For women who are considering embarking on entrepreneurship, because there's the security in employment, what can you relate with regards to your experience?
So I never see myself as a woman leader. I see myself as a leader, and I compete with leaders, men and women. And yes, there's the additional responsibility of, it ends up being the woman's responsibility when it comes to raising a family. But I do think, if you really decide that you're going to have the balance, you can have it all. And I was very fortunate in that I had, great support at home, in my staff, but I also was able to carve out time to spend with my children. And it's all about what you decide you want it to be, right? I mean, you can decide that you want to spend 80% of your time in your office, or you want to spend, and I wanted to do as much as I can for both. I wanted to give both adequate attention. I was growing children, I was also growing a business, and they both needed equal attention. I'm very fortunate that I was able to do that, but I also worked with very strong professionals who were able to create this brand with me.
With regards to crisis management,
yes,
there's a lot of communications that goes out with regards to crises and crisis management. Are there any particular incidences that you'd like to recount?
I think the Kenya Airways crash clearly is, probably the best and the hardest work that we did around a crisis. Plane crashes, just by their very nature, are, so absolutely tragic and awful. Yes. But I do think that we worked really hard to ensure that it was communicated well, as hard as it was for all of us. It was very hard, given that my husband was a Kenya Airways pilot as well. So I could feel it from an employee point of view. I could feel it from a passenger point of view. I could feel it from a family point of view. But we put in some really long hours to ensure that crisis was well communicated. And I'm very proud of that work.
Yes, having been in the audience and listening to the communications that was being sent out, we felt very well informed. We also felt that there was a lot of communication that was going round, so that you didn't feel like you were in the dark, especially with regards to those who were looking out for their loved ones, wondering what happened.
Yeah, it was just awful. I mean, it really was. It's something that you never want to do again. But if you're going to be in that situation, I think my team and I really handled it well. We were there for the families. We were there for the management.
Yes.
And we were able to walk the journey with them. And actually, some of the people that lost family during that crash from other parts of the world remain my friends. I've been invited to weddings and, met their children, and it's just been, there was a real connection. SpiceFM.